The European model is expecting the first snowstorm to move through right around the Friday through Saturday timeframe. As we continue to move forward with the forecast, we see that this low pressure system is rather weak. There isn't a ton of instability surrounding it. We do have a decent amount of snow showers just to the north of it, but it is still capable of bringing anywhere between 3 to 6 inches of snowfall. This is right around the overnight hours on Friday, where places like the southern portions of North Dakota, as well as portions of Minnesota, more specifically central Minnesota, which means that the Minneapolis area, you certainly need to pay attention to the snowfall as we approach a Friday morning time frame. It could be moderate at times. It won't fall at a very fast clip, but certainly enough to make your morning commute potentially dangerous on the roadways, as you certainly can't underestimate, let's say, seeing anywhere between 3 to 6 inches of snowfall, which is around the range of what you should forecast over the Minneapolis area. And I know the big question regarding this first snowstorm is if it'll move far south enough to impact the areas a little bit further southward, like in Chicago, or potentially in places like Detroit a little bit further eastward, and who knows, maybe even Boston in the more long-term future, because the storm system is expected to continue to move further eastward and in fact intensify quite a bit to a very powerful northeaster. But let's backtrack a little bit. Let's first talk about Chicago. So for Chicago, the European model, as of its latest run, is bringing some snow showers over the area. However, I'll say that accumulation is very minuscule, if there even is accumulation, as there very well could be the possibility you're just going to miss out on the snowfall accumulation, as the temperature is just a little bit too warm. We do have a small amount of ridging that's right in between this upper level low and this low pressure system right here, and depending on how strong that ridging is out, could mean the difference between maybe Chicago receiving an inch of snowfall to no snowfall accumulation at all, and entirely a rain event. You guys wouldn't even experience, there's still that possibility you won't even experience a mixing of rain and snow if the storm system moves further northward. I do at the very least expect snow to fall in Chicago. However, at this point, it's likely going to be very difficult to receive much of any snowfall accumulation. Maybe a tracing in Chicago for the forecast right now. Again, if we were to see this move a little bit further southward, that could be more, maybe 1 to 3 inches of snowfall. But at this point, you should expect just a mixing of rain and snow and no snowfall accumulation in Chicago. But keep in mind, the forecast is very close. But for the areas sort of northward, like in Milwaukee, you should definitely have a higher chance of snowfall accumulation. I'll actually expect that Milwaukee should experience around an inch of snow from this. Not a ton, but certainly enough to potentially cause havoc for your Friday afternoon commute. But moving forward with the forecast, this snowfall will move into the Michigan area right around the Friday evening time frame. So definitely towards northern and central Michigan, you definitely need to watch out for that. And then continuing to move forward, we're going to see these two low pressure systems converge, which means that the northeast could experience a pretty significant nor'easter, while the snow will mainly be relegated to the interior northeast. What has me concerned for northeast is that there's going to be a heavy amount of rainfall right up along the coast, thanks to how powerful this storm system will be, because you're essentially taking a cold core upper level low to combine with more subtropical low pressure system a little bit further southward that's a little bit warmer when it comes to its temperature. So when you combine these two low pressure systems together with fairly different temperatures just surrounding it, that's just a recipe for a ton of instability and a ton of convective activity for this rapidly intensify as it moves up the east coast, where I'd say right up along the coast of the northeast for places like New York City, Philadelphia, Washington, D.C., you could see anywhere between 2 to 4 inches of rainfall. So definitely be concerned for the possibility of flooding right up along the coast. And then for the interior northeast, this is where the worst of snowfall, at least for this specific snowstorm. I'll get to the second one in a bit, because the second snowstorm is pretty much going to put these snow totals to shame when it comes, despite how strong this snowstorm will be by the time it approaches the northeast. But taking a look at this snowstorm, we see that very heavy snowfall right over the northern portions of New Hampshire, Vermont, upstate New York, and pretty much the entirety of Maine, with maybe the exception of the southern coast of Maine. You guys would experience a little bit more of a mixing and maybe some rain intrusion, especially little later once the slow moves a little bit further northward. But for the most part, Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, and upstate New York could see anywhere between 6 to 12 to potentially 12 to 20 inches of snowfall from this, as like I said, there's just going to be so much instability and so much convective activity for that to occur. And now for the city, in terms of a possibility, a city like Boston could experience snowfall, because you do see Boston isn't very far from the rain-snow line in this scenario. We're 72 hours out, so there still could be changes with the forecast. However, I'll still say with confidence that most likely Boston will experience entirely a rain event. Maybe initially you would experience snowfall, but any snowfall accumulation would be very minimal, if there's any at all. I currently don't expect snowfall accumulation for Boston, so you don't need to worry about snowfall most likely for the Boston metropolitan area, and of course for the areas further southward in the northeast, as it just seems like the ridging, like I said, is just a little bit too strong, so this low won't be able to move south enough and to create just enough of a northerly flow to bring that cold air further southward and allow the coastal northeast to get involved with snowfall. So I do expect this to mainly be an interior northeast threat. But now let's take a look at the snowfall accumulation, and if we were to take a look at that, at least for this first snowstorm, I'll get to the second snowstorm in just 1 second, but here's the snowfall accumulation for this first snowstorm. We see that areas like Milwaukee could maybe experience anywhere between 3 to 6 inches of snowfall, at least based on what the European model is saying. The GFS model is forecasting a snow totals to be a little bit further northward, and we do see in this scenario, the European model does bring snowfall accumulation to Chicago, but keep in mind this ratio of 1 inch of rain equates to 10 inches of snow isn't always the case. Most likely, it should be a little. You should experience a little bit less snowfall than this, but it's definitely interesting that the European model doesn't want to bring snowfall accumulation right over Chicago and the areas a little bit further southward. So I wouldn't rule out that possibility of snowfall accumulation in the Chicago metropolitan area. So it's going to be a very close forecast, so make sure to stay tuned. But as of right now, I'd still expect maybe a tracing of snowfall for Chicago, at least for right now. If we were to take a look at a GFS model snowfall accumulation for this first snowstorm, you're going to see it's fairly similar, which makes me have high confidence with this forecast. Of course, if you're closer to a rain snow line, that's where the uncertainty definitely rises. We clearly see, let me go further back. I don't want to include this second snowstorm just yet because it's going to lead to misleading snow totals, because you shouldn't expect like 2 feet of snowfall in just the Friday to Saturday time frame. I just want to show you guys what's in the near future, at least this first snowstorm, so you guys could prepare for this specific snowstorm, and then by next week you could worry about the next one, and then we'll combine those 2 snow totals to show you guys the amount of snowfall you should experience over the next 5 days in total. But this for the first snowstorm, we see fairly similar forecasts. North Dakota and extending into Minneapolis, you could maybe see around 3 inches of snowfall. Same goes for Milwaukee, maybe closer to 6 inches of snowfall in Milwaukee. I'll expect around 5 inches of snowfall from Milwaukee, but Chicago isn't experiencing any snowfall at all. So like I said, this is why the forecast for Chicago is a little bit more uncertain. It could really go either way. Right now, expect a tracing for Chicago, but it could be more if we were to see a track for southward. And then shifting our focus further eastward into central Michigan, you should expect mainly 3 to 6 inches of snowfall. The heaviest snowfall should move just to the north of Detroit, so keep that in mind. And then for the interior northeast, you should expect a large area of 3 to 6 inches of snowfall, while the areas of Maine should expect more than that, closer to maybe around 6 to 12 inches of snowfall. But like I said earlier, that's not the only snowstorm we're worried about. This second snowstorm could be even worse, but let's backtrack a little bit. So if we were to continue to move forward, we're eventually going to see by the Friday time frame that another low pressure system should bring a heavy amount of convective activity right over the Pacific Northwest, where it should be rainfall right around the lower elevation, snowfall in the higher elevations. But for the areas for southwestward, it should be a little bit more clear, as if you were to hop off the plane at LAX, and if you look to your right and see the Hollywood sign, it's certainly going to be very visible because of how sunny it'll be in Southern California thanks to this low pressure system being well to the north of you guys. So when it comes to eventually you should maybe see a little bit more convective activity, but definitely not in comparison to what you're going to see a little bit further northward in the Pacific Northwest, where you're just going to see everything when it comes to rain and snowfall over these areas. So if we were to continue to move forward with the forecast, the first thing we know we need to take note of is that this storm system is quite a bit more powerful than the last. It now has a millibar pressure of 991 millibars, and compared to the last snowstorm, it was barely hovering around 1,000 millibars. So already this is capable of dumping a heavy amount of snowfall over many areas of the Pacific Northwest and the northern Midwest. So we see in Montana you're experiencing a large area of snowfall, as there's plenty of cold air behind it. And the difference between this low pressure system and this the first low pressure system, is that this low isn't an upper level low. It's backed up by the jet stream, which means that it's able to pull a lot more of that polar air further southward and create a much more unstable environment, which is something an upper level low can't do because it's disconnected from the jet stream. And as you probably know, the jet stream separates the cold polar air amongst some more subtropical air further southward. So when an upper level low is disconnected from the jet stream, it isn't able to pull from that cold polar air, which means that there's less instability for this to work with. This is completely backed up by the jet stream, as I'm gonna show you with the 500 millibar height anomaly. So let me show you guys this real quick, because it better exemplifies my point regarding why this storm system is so powerful. So taking a look, this is our upper level low we've been talking about just now throughout the United States. So if we were to take a look at that, you barely notice the upper level low here. The upper level low is located right around this area, which is well far to the south of this main jet stream to the north, which means that there isn't a lot of instability for that storm system to work with. But compared to the second snowstorm that's going to move through, look at how far south the jet stream dips, how far south the cold air dips, and that's just creating a ton of instability for this second snowstorm to be very powerful. Now, taking a look back at the radar to show you guys when you should experience impacts. And by the way, both of the computer models are showing very similar forecasts, which makes me believe that the forecast is fairly certain between for this snowstorm. Of course, there's still days to go, right around 4 to 5 days left. But look at the Sunday night time frame. GFS model brings just an intense amount of snowfall right over the northern Midwest. Minneapolis is experiencing heavy snowfall rates, I'll say equivalent to 1 to 3 inches per hour in a scenario like this. The pressure of this storm system is very low at 985 millibars. So this is expected to bring a strong amount of wind as well with a pressure this low. And when it comes to the amount of convective activity right over this area, it's really like a party in the USA by how much convective activity we're seeing over the Midwest and the Pacific Northwest as well, where there's just a large amount of snowfall covering pretty much 1/3 of the United States, which is quite insane. And then continuing to move forward, I'm gonna put my hands up because this is playing a negative tilt when it comes to the track of this storm system, which means that this storm system will be quite powerful and definitely capable enough of bringing just potentially up to 2 feet of snow in some areas. And with a negative tilt, this storm system is also going to move fairly slowly relative to other low pressure systems that move through the Midwest, which means that those snow totals should be quite high, and the heaviest snowfall will of course be right over northern South Dakota, extending into North Dakota. Minneapolis will get involved, the northern portion of Wisconsin, and northern portion of Michigan, where these areas could expect 12 to 18 inches of snowfall, as the forecast is becoming more certain at this time. And other areas like Kansas could get involved with some snowfall, and Nebraska on the backside, more specifically, that would happen right around the Monday afternoon time frame. And then head into Tuesday, the snowfall still stays until it eventually moves out, I'll say about Tuesday evening time frame. That's when it should move just to the north of the United States-Canadian border, and the European model is showing a fairly similar forecast. So if we were to take a look at the snowfall forecast from the GFS model, for the snowstorm, we clearly see this could easily dump anywhere between 12 to 18 inches of snowfall to potentially up to 2 feet right up along the border of South Dakota and North Dakota. So this is definitely very concerning. Minneapolis should expect the same, extending into Wisconsin, as I'll say the forecast is fairly certain for a lot of these areas. So make sure to prepare accordingly for this snowstorm. In terms of changes that could happen over the next few days, it's gonna definitely be fairly difficult to iron out this far out, but at this point it seems like there won't be that many changes regarding the trajectory of this snowstorm, thanks to the fact that both computer models are in pretty high agreement with this. So I find it hard to believe we're going to see much of any major changes with this forecast, even if we're a few days out. So definitely keep this in mind over the next few days. European model, again, showing a fairly similar forecast. Here's a little bit more of an in-detail forecast regarding the amount of snowfall you should expect. This is provided from the Weather Channel, and we clearly see that you could see anywhere between 18 to 24 to potentially over 2 feet of snow just south of the Fargo area, just to the west of Minneapolis, while Minneapolis could experience 12 to 18 inches of snowfall. So definitely prepare for this. Places like Des Moines could get involved with 3 to 6 inches of snowfall, and Rapid City could get involved with maybe around 5 to 8 inches of snowfall, while Montana could get involved with 5 to 8 inches of snowfall as well. But that's it for now, guys, and I thank you guys for watching.